we have to use little devices here. So big hello from my side, and I have the pleasure to talk about the most interesting topic in the data center, which is storage, as you know. Before we start, who of you is a storage person? Do we still have storage persons, or did we all become hyper-converged people? No, we haven't, right? Great. The thing is, the data center is changing so fundamentally, and storage has to change with it. So before we can talk about storage, we have to look at some of the changes that are influencing that. And when you talk about changes in the data center, you ask the big guys. This is a chart from IDC, and you see 1 million things. Well, some of them might be a bit virtual, so when we look for the really important stuff, we can get away with some of the bubbles. But there is still a lot of things that are staying on the chart. So one thing, what they call workload realignment, basically means that we have different infrastructure in the data center now, which is much more cloud style. Cloud style in terms of scalability, in terms of cost, in terms of agility, how fast can I deploy that, or actually how fast should I be able to deploy it. We all talked about hyperconvergence. So we do see hyperconvergence, maybe not everywhere, but things are mingling, are merging together. Software-defined is happening, software-defined storage, but also software-defined networking, and that is the next one. Network transformation. We do see that also the network is becoming software-defined. And IDC calls it smart data center. What is that? Well, the thing is, we have this tremendous data growth. We talk about the Internet of Things. Data is growing in a way that is really not linear anymore. So what does it mean for you who are operating hardware data centers? You need to cope with much more work, but you have the same people, your budget. Who has a budget that is rising year on year? I've never seen a hand here. So typically, budgets are under pressure, so you have to find a way to be smarter, to automate, to save OpEx, to cope with that. So how can we help you with storage to get there? And how do you win in the data center? And actually, we will see a big divide. We will see companies who are basically staying with the legacy IT. And that'll be not good enough in the future. To be competitive, to stay competitive, we need to be able to change the infrastructure and to get more value out of it, to cope with the dramatic growth. And to be a leader, we have to embrace this change. And that is very much about what I want to talk today, how to embrace that change. It has to do a lot with these stages. You can actually imagine that the x-axis is a time axis. And quite a number of years ago, we deployed classical storage system servers, everything nice. Then we went into stage 2, virtualizing everything with VMware at the beginning, then Hyper-V. Getting to a complete virtualization today, we have virtualization ratios of 80%, 90%. Then we get into automation. And ultimately, we have hybrid cloud, so you have the possibility to move out some workloads to the public cloud. You keep some things on premise, where your own IP is in, where you don't want to take the risk. So how to move from stage 0 to stage 4? How does storage change on the move from stage 0 to stage 4? That's the big thing. And there are some fundamental variables that have a big impact here. And the thing is, in the past, we had a storage system. Now we have many different ways how to implement storage. And we use the metaphor of a zoo. So the old one, that was the beer, the controller-based storage. Now we get the rabbit, fast, all flash systems. The swarm, hyper-growth, hyperscale system that behave like a swarm of fishes or actually birds. Or the hyper-converged animal, which is everything in once, which is actually not real, so there is not such an animal. So let's go through that one by one. And the biggest game changer for storage is certainly the advent of flash, of all flash. That started a couple of years ago, and we have been there all the time. So I want to share with you one customer of ours called GKL. You can see a nice little movie at the booth. GKL is a market research company. And market research, hey, that's big data. So they have all this information, and they want to find out, pressing a button in real time, how consumers are behaving. So you need super fast systems. They're using an Eternus DX600 equipped with only flash, and that changed their life. It changed from, I have to wait quite some time, to everything is here at my fingertip. That was the first phase of flash, only about speed, only for selected applications, database, OLTP. That was basically it. But as you know, times are changing, and this is a big fire. We don't like fires. And the other thing that people don't like is messing around with disk drives, because disk drives tend to fail. So when you have a data center with 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 disk drives, you know every day you will have failure. Every day you have to exchange disk drives. You have to have rebuild cycles. And now that the disk drives become very, very big, rebuild cycles are very, very long. So you have two bits to protect it. Does it help? Not really. So actually, people are really fed up swapping out disk. So that's one of the many reasons why flash is now becoming a mainstream thing. So we did start from performance at a very high cost. Then we went over to a situation like today, okay, I want to have as much flash as I can afford for many use cases, but what we are going to see very soon is the all-silicon data center, where you just make it easy, where you put everything on flash. And that's possible because the technology is changing. And it's changing in a way, of course, flash is fast. Flash will even be faster in the future with some of the innovations happening with NVRAM and stuff. Flash is also reliable. We will see that the reliability depends on the technology. The point is, it's reliable enough, and it's actually more reliable than hard disk drives. And flash is becoming more and more affordable. So you probably have heard all these buzzwords like SLC, MLC, TLC, and people tell you this is good and this is not so good. The difference is in the way how the big manufacturers are producing NAND flash. So single level cell obviously has only a single level, so it's 1 or 0. You can store 1 bit. And with MLC and TLC, the density is getting up. And while the density is getting up, the price goes down. And then from a technology point of view, maturity is, so it's not as reliable. But actually, you can forget about all these LCs on that part of the slide and focus on this part here, and that shouldn't be in your way, and that is DWPD. DWPD is the one measure that is really important for you, that is drive writes per day. So what can we as a vendor guarantee? How many times a day can you write the full capacity of the media per day? And typical value today is 1 DWPD. And now you might say, 1 sounds like small. We come from 10. The reality is you don't do that. If you have a capacity of, let's say, 100 terabyte, you don't write 100 terabyte every day. You don't do that. So in reality, we will come to a time where DWPDs of 0.5, 0.3 will be good enough. And here we get to price points where flash is finally superior to disk drives. The thing is, there are so many more advantages of flash, and that's why it's becoming ubiquitous. The thing is also, when we use flash in this new way as a standard media for the data centers, then the requirements for all flash appliances are completely different. So in the early days, it was okay if you had a one-trick pony startup. It was having a super fast system that was incompatible to everything else you had. It was an island in your data center, no integration at all, but that was okay, that was acceptable because it did a great job for one task. If you're now moving to all flash everywhere, this is completely nuts because you will not be able to pay it. You need to have a proper integration. You need to have all the management features that any storage system has to have. And that's exactly, of course, the strength of Eternus. So we have all flash systems that deliver management integration, mirroring, transparent failover, what we call the storage cluster, automated quality of service, so whatever application you're running, you get exactly the performance in terms of IOPS, in terms of latency that you need to make your end users happy. You do not want to have these calls like, oh, my SAP is so slow, and our storage makes sure you don't get them. Let's compare. Let's take a flash system, and where is the slide hidden? Okay, I can't get back, I guess. So let's compare. Here we have Eternal Soul Flash, and actually there is a very exciting launch coming up, so this event is a bit too early. On the 12th of October, we will introduce our next generation of flash systems. I cannot talk about it in detail because we are before the public announcement, but I have taken the color a bit awake. So you see where we have major improvements. That's where these little light red stars are indicating. So I didn't want to talk about competition. I just want to talk about the different kinds of the systems you find on the market. So we have Eternal Soul Flash. We have those startups who are only doing flash. And of course, you can do that in a software design. And there are very fundamental conceptual differences. So when it comes to response time in terms of latency, the Eternus DX, the Eternus concept is based on super response times. It's the best latency in the industry, and that is also true for flash. So when it comes to latency, we are beating every single storage system out there. It's the fastest. When it comes to IOPS, we are good. We will be even better on the 12th of October, and from then on, we will beat everybody else out there. Capacity, we are good. On the 12th of October, we will be the best out there. Management capabilities, that's our stronghold. We have more than 40 years of experience in the data center with storage, and we know inside out how to make management for the admin, for the operators in the data center really easy, getting cost really down. Reliability, in our DNA. The first developers who started storage systems in Fujitsu were mainframe guys. They did know something about reliability, not like, oh, I take a white box design, put some Linux on it, and I tweak it around. That's not the way how we do it. It's a very different way with a lot of double insurance, some things in there. These are rock-solid storage systems. And we have a wide variety of use cases. It's the full package that counts. It's not just the one feature, it's a complete package that makes a difference. And here we come now into use cases that are much wider. So we started with OLTP. We did start with databases with VDI. That was the point where all flash was used in the beginning. But now we get into mixed workloads. We get into enterprise virtualization, VMware, which is a major use case. Of course, we do trading, analytics. We also do collaboration. We do e-commerce. So we get the full line of applications you find in a data center. So now we come to a real-life comparison. And we look at an Eternus DX, our standard storage offering. And let's imagine we take a typical mixed workload with 30 to 40 terabytes at 19K IOPS. If you want to do that with a disk-based system, you end up with such a kind of configuration. It's not just Fujitsu, that's with every vendor. So you have like 260 drives, you have about 10 microseconds latency, you have about 4,000 watts of power, and 22 80 units of rack space. That's how storage looks like today. What do you think? How big is the box if you take all flash? It's damn small. It's very small. You can do exactly the same performance, actually even more, 350K IOPS, much more, with a 2U system. You can take, because of the density of flash, even more capacity. Yeah. So if you really compare these two configurations, they look so uneven. The smaller one, 4 times more IOPS, 500 times faster response time, 11 times higher density, 75% savings for power and cooling, and 8 times less cost for maintenance. And never underestimate the cost of maintenance. I don't have to tell you, you have probably made the experience buying by somebody else after 3 years, latest after 5 years. The contracts are changing. The prices are mysteriously going up and up and up. We don't do these things. But anyhow, of course, if you have such a compact system, maintenance prices are lower. So don't compare only the CapEx. Look at the complete picture for cost, and you will see what a fundamentally positive impact an all-flash Eternus can have to your bill on the data center. And if you look at the cost per IOPS, such a classical system, an HDD-based system, is at about €1.50 per IOPS, and here an all-flash system about 50 cents per IOPS. So factor 3 on price. Tremendous savings. So when we talked about at the beginning changing the data center rules, that is a very good example. You move away from just operational issues to being a business driver. You have to manage less gear in the data center. You have a much easier way of handling timeouts or something. Actually, you don't have to do performance tuning anymore. Yeah? All these LUN, elaborate professor or something work, you don't have to do it. It's fast anyhow. You can automate much more things. You have per admin more capacity, so less to care for. Tiering is a different thing. And you have, because of our great automatic quality of service management, this guarantee that the end user is happy about the performance. At least it's not the storage. At least it's not the storage. So, great story to go there. Let's come to another animal, to the swarm of fishes, for example. And that has to do, again, with the change we see in the data center, with the change of use cases. So let's imagine you are going into hybrid IT, and you want to put some of your data to the public cloud, and you're using an S3 interface. But maybe you do not want to put everything to the public cloud. Maybe there is data that is close to your heart. There is core IP of your company. You just don't trust. You want to keep it on your premise. So the most easy thing is to have an on-premise device which is also supporting S3, but ideally it should also support the paradigms of the public cloud in terms of agility, in terms of cost point, and that's exactly what we do. Another example, you're using big data analytics. You're using a Hadoop cluster to create some very interesting analytics. But in these days, I mean, in the past, when you were doing HPC, very often you would just throw away the results. That's not so good anymore, because now we have the capability to go back in time, to look at dramatic amounts of data and find trends and understand markets. So very often we want to keep such large amounts of data. But how to do that? If you have a Hadoop cluster and it produces 1 petabyte of data every time it works, how can you keep that? What about third platform or mode 2, depending on who you talk to, if you run these kind of applications like sync and share, if you have your private Dropbox-like environment, how do you do that? So for all these use cases, we have created a platform that brings public cloud infrastructure, the cost points, the agility, the S3 interface to your data center. And that is what we call the Eternus CD 10,000. CD stands for Content Depot, and this is actually a software-defined storage system. It's a complete storage system. It's an object storage system. The scalability we need in the future, in the multi-petabyte range, can only be achieved if the inner structure of the system is object storage. So when you look at today's file servers, there'll be the point where scalability will not work anymore. So object is the thing. Whether you use the object interface, that's a different story. So you see here, today already, we can use either object or block or in the future file. But the inner infrastructure needs to be object to be able to scale. And this one does scale today in a dramatic way. So even today, we are supporting more than 50 petabyte of storage. And now you say, well, 50 petabyte, not exactly what I need. So who has today storage with more than 1 petabyte capacity? Anybody here? Half a petabyte? Anybody still awake? Ah, thank you. So typically you get already today a couple of hands for more than a petabyte, and it's growing fast. So we talked to a car manufacturer. They said, as soon as they start autonomous driving, the fleet of cars will produce almost 10 petabytes every half year from the very beginning. So we see use cases where we will be flooded. If you look at utility, if you have smart meters in every home in a large country, like in India, 50 petabyte is nothing. This is actually not by far not enough. So we get there. And you need this kind of infrastructure to cope with that. And we decided not to create a proprietary system. We use Ceph storage, which is an open source technology at the heart of the system, because nobody wins against open source. The open source community is the most powerful software development engine on the planet, bigger than any single storage vendor. What we can bring to the table is our experience in creating enterprise storage, but we are part of OpenStack open source. Fujitsu is a very strong supporter of OpenStack. We are already today one of the 10 biggest contributors to OpenStack. You can measure that in the amounts of commits you get. And we do that also in the storage space. You know that our own cloud, the K5 cloud, is based on OpenStack. Fujitsu as a company has committed that we will move our internal IT over time completely to OpenStack. And anyhow, this is still a storage system. This is not a do-it-yourself approach. We don't want anybody to go to the internet and download some immature code and play around. This is nice for people who love to play around, but if you have the responsibility to run a data center, if you want happy customers, you don't do that. It's much too risky. So we give you an enterprise system with all the services around it where you're 100% sure it does what it's supposed to do and your customers are happy. But the most interesting thing is it's an immortal system. What we will never achieve as humans, the system here, it does achieve it. And this is important because already today, migration of storage has come to a point where we can hardly manage that. If I look at our largest customers who are using today an Eternus DX8000, they spent like 2 years migrating data from their old system to the new system. And the bigger the systems become, the more time they need. At some point in time, the migration time is longer than the time that the system is actually operational. I mean, depending on the local tax laws, it might be there for 5 years. So you cannot take 6 years of migration if you keep the system for 5 years. So there are some natural barriers here. And the Eternus CD10000, once you invest here, you don't have to do a forklift upgrade anymore because the system itself can change as it's living. Just a quick animation here. So let's say you are starting with 4 nodes and you're deploying some data, the system automatically balances it. So it's optimizing itself. You don't have to do any performance tuning. The system makes sure that all the resources are used in the same way. And it is creating redundancy, either by saving multiple copies of a set of data. So you can actually tell them, I want to have 2 copies, 3 copies, whatever requirement you have. Or we can use erasure code to be more efficient and save some space. So if anything goes wrong, if any data is lost, you don't do a RAID 5, RAID 6 rebuild for a week or so. If you have a very large SATA drive today and you want to keep working with the system, a restore can take, a rebuild can take like a week. And of course, the probability that something might happen during this week is too high. So with this system, no rebuild, to get the data back, to use an old copy, can happen very, very fast, very, very fast. So what happens now if you want to, the system is full, you want to deploy new nodes. So you put in a couple of new nodes in the system. And now the miracle, also in this case, the system does the tuning itself. So it automatically starts to deploy workloads on the new nodes and balances the system. You get top performance without any human intervention. And now, that is an old node. You want to get rid of that. You do it node by node. So you tell the system, evacuate it, and it starts evacuating it and puts the data to another node, and then you can switch it off and throw it out of the window and get rid of the old stuff. So instead of system A, system B, forklift upgrade, 2 years of a horrible project, you are changing it on the run without any impact of operations. Dream. A dream has become true for storage management. That is the Eternus CD10K. And now you say, OpenStack, I heard so much stories about it, I don't know. Does it fit to my plans? Does it fit to the interfaces? I want to test it out. And we understand that, so that's why we created what we call the Quick Start Edition. It's a single node. So normally, such a system, it's a scale-out system, starts with 4 nodes. It's a single node. We put a hypervisor in here, KVM, and then we put all the CD10K software virtually on top of the hypervisor. So you get a virtual CD10K you can use for a proof of concept. You can use to play around with the interface. You can test out third platform applications. And if you like it, if it does what you want to do, then you can transform this in the first node of your full-blown system. You buy another 3 nodes, and here you are with a full-blown, fantastic, eternal CD10K. That is a quick start into next-generation storage at a very affordable price. So we talk here about less than 10K euro for next-generation storage. Cool stuff. Serious. Mihu talked about hyperconvergence, so I will skip that for the benefit of time. And we'll go directly into the beer. And that is, oh, that's interesting. I see different pictures here and there. How does that work? Ah, yeah, okay. So for the sake of time, I think we jump right in here. So these are a couple of customers we are serving in here in India. But what we would like to share with you quickly is the setup of today's DX environment. So if you need storage, the Eternus DX is the bear that can help you to do that. And we start very small with the DX60, and we grow all the way up to the DX8000. So it's a tremendous scalability within one family with exactly the same software. So it's like flying an Airbus. If you can fly the A320, you can also fly the A380. You educate your people once, and they can fly the full fleet. If you want to replicate, you can take a small system like a DX100 as a replication target for the biggest system, a DX8000. So that is really making stuff easy. That is really operational efficiency. Example, Stechert Stahlrohrmöbel. So probably a name that is hard to pronounce if you're not German. It's one of these hidden champions. It's one of the world leaders in manufacturing chairs. So for example, they have been equipping this gigantic hall. They have been producing all these chairs here. They're running an SAP system, and they had the issue that, like many companies, they were doing 1 backup a day. 1 backup a day means if the system fails, you lose 1 day of work on average. And they wanted to get to a system where they lose much less time. And they did that using Eternus DX, using a tool called the Eternus Snapshot Manager, a very powerful, best-in-class snapshot manager. And as a target for the backup, the CS800, one of our backup appliances. And this is backup software independent. So you can use any backup software you want on top of that. And using these snapshots, you get a snapshot every 30 minutes. So if anything goes wrong, you're losing 30 minutes of work. And there's a big difference whether you lose 24 hours of work or 30 minutes. So that is one way how to get the integration of storage and backup to best of breed, like Stechert did do this. So for the sake of time. Another very nice example is the Valsa private bank. It's an Austrian bank, private bank, so you have to have like at least 300K euros to start working with them, so I can work with them. They're using Eternus DX, and of course they have a very high demand and reliability. And they're using the Eternus DX with something we call the storage cluster. The storage cluster is unique in the industry because it's a seamless, transparent failover. You have seen many clusters, and typically when you cluster storage, you have to script manually to make sure if something goes wrong, that the other system takes over. You have to have 1 million certifications because a cluster is a complex thing. It's not complex anymore with storage cluster. Why? Because we use a very simple trick. Whenever a system fails, the physical address is given to another system. So the server layer, the application layer, doesn't even notice that storage has failed. It's completely transparent. That's why it's called transparent failover. And it's very, very fast. So if you're running Oracle, for example, Oracle will not notice that there is something wrong with storage. Everything will continue as it was. No scripting, no certification, no messing around. Disruption-free operations regardless what happens to storage. And the best thing is what we just now introduced, storage cluster for iSCSI. You can use economy mode iSCSI. You can use a DX100 at very low cost to have storage cluster. The best cluster for storage in the industry. Very, very cool stuff. I talked quickly about automated quality of service. This is as easy as it looks here. You can actually tell the system, I have these, I don't know, in this case, 9 applications. Some of them are important, others are not that important. For the important ones, dear system, gives the users this and that latency and IOPS, and the system will tune. It will use automatic storage tiering to put the most important data where the system is fastest. It will control the service level. So you make sure that your most important customers are happy customers. Of course, the less important customers might be not that happy, so you have to balance. But it's you are in the driver's seat. It's not by accident. That's important. VMware integration. The most important workload for any storage system today is VMware. We are offering the virtual volumes. Virtual volumes is the standard, next generation standard for integrating storage systems with the VMware environment, and we are leading with vVol integration. That really, a storage system looks like VMware storage and not like something proprietary. You don't have to worry about LANs anymore. You actually see VMDKs on storage. Again, a way to make it very easy. This is just a VDI example, but I think the photo was nice, so I put it in here. Don't want to spend time on it. Okay, so we talked about the bare, Eternus DX, the rock-solid backbone of storage. We talked about the super fast, now omnipresent flash storage. We talked about the swarm, the next generation third platform storage. And we talked not about hyperconverged, the strange combination of animals that don't exist. Different use cases, different meaning, but what they all have in common, we need backup, right? We still need to protect data. Even if you have this fantastic storage cluster, that is good for high availability, but if data corruption takes place, a cluster doesn't solve the issue, so we still need the final insurance, we need backup. And we are actually very experienced here. So one of our customers is TAP Portugal, the Portuguese airline. Actually, you saw on Mehu's slides that we have many airlines as customers, Lufthansa, and so on and so forth. TAP Portugal is using the Eternus CS8000. The Eternus CS8000 is the biggest backup target on the planet. So whenever you have a very large data center, when you talk about biggest capacities, about highest backup speed, but most important, highest restore speed, the CS8000 will do the job. And that is why people like TAP Portugal decided to use them. The other point is, because it's such an enormous consolidation machine, it reduces the effort of making backup available dramatically. This is a super, super cost saver because it's the ultimate automation of the backup process. So when we look into more details, typical, so we actually, the family we have here, it's a CS8000 for the biggest demands. We have a CS800 as a mid-range dedupe appliance, and we have an integrated appliance that is a CS200C that is basically the Commvault appliance. So these are our backup appliances. And if we look at the CS8000, we have a couple of very typical questions that you might be able to read and might not. So first thing is, do I finish my backups in time? Still, companies have backup windows. Who has still a backup window in his company? Some. So you don't have endless time to make a backup, typically sometime at night, so you have to be fast. And if the backup window is becoming not long enough, if your backup takes too long, then it's just about pure speed. Sometimes people say, oh, it's just a backup, so you need cheap infrastructure, the cheapest you can get. For a large data center, this is of course not true. You need the fastest you can get to get ready in time. And if a disaster happened and you want to get back to operations, the restore should be very fast as well. So that one is fast. Next thing is you have a data center. You have all these heterogeneous systems, a mainframe and an AS400 or however they call it today, and you have some open systems, and you want to consolidate everything because consolidation saves money because it makes life easier. Then it has to be big enough. So we need to be able to manage petabytes of storage. If you look at capacities, 60% of your data center capacity is in backup, not in the tier 1 storage. CS8000 is scalable enough to cover the complete data center. If there is a disaster, you want to do a restore, your system should be there. It should work. It should not be offline. So it should be highly available. The CS8000 is the only backup target that has high availability built in, and we can do all kinds of replication, including synchronous replication for backup. Management. If you don't go for the system, so we have customers that, oh, okay, I'll go for a competitor, I take dedupe appliances. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You will never be able to cope with one. You will have 8 or 10. And then the issue starts. Dedupe appliance means you have to have admins for all that. They had 8 dedupe appliances, they ended up with 8 admins, and then they had extra time for replication, they needed extra time for housekeeping. There was no 24/7 operation. Very different with CS8000. Dramatically reduced need for admins and 24/7 operations. So if we look at another case, Sparda Bank, they are actually operating a 600 terabyte backup every day with 2 half-time admins. You get very close to automated backup with almost no admin interaction. Strong, strong savings. And on top, availability and fast backups and restores. And another example, Modern Bakery in Dubai. They are using Fujitsu PrimePlex for SAP HANA, Mio mentioned that. So analytics for SAP. The backup, CS200, the integrated appliance we do together with Commvault exclusively from Fujitsu. This is really super simplified. Whenever we talk about PrimePlex solutions, the best backup is in a box, CS200. So summary, So we have a lot of usage scenarios we discussed in the last couple of minutes, and we have so many different answers. So we need to be clear what we pick and choose for what purpose. Very important, all flash systems, go flash. It's not about performance anymore, it's about mainstream adoption. Software-defined storage is great. If you need hyperscale, that's the way to go. It's a new architecture for new use cases, fantastic technology. Hyperconvergence, very good if you are virtualization-centric, if you run everything from a VMware perspective. Doing hyperconvergence with VMware is a fantastic approach. And of course, you can still use the bear and have the most rock-solid all-rounder. And don't forget about backup and archiving. All these storage systems still need backup and archiving. So whenever you want to have a new animal, we can actually talk about that. So here we are. Thank you very much for staying with me, and hope you enjoyed that. Thank you.